So we're in the shop today. I've got the Chevy 1-ton mud truck. It's built on an RC 4-wheel drive Trailfinder 2 long wheelbase chassis. The bed I made lengthened it to the appropriate proportions for a pickup instead of the Blazer. It's built out of the RC 4-wheel drive Blazer body. I did some filming with it, some mudding, and I blew something up with the electric motor that's encased inside the scale V8. I think I smoked the motor. So we're going to get the body off and get the motor out and take a look at it and see if that's what went wrong or not. And then we got some upcoming projects with the scale town that I'm going to be building, and I kind of need a pickup truck to haul some material around. So I think what we're going to end up doing is taking the scale V8 out, putting this adapter in. This will allow me to run the scale transmission and just have the electric motor without the scale V8. Just for the sake of being able to work on it and ease of maintenance while we're using it as a haul truck. I think we're going to leave the lift in it. I was debating on taking it down a little bit and putting some smaller tires on it, but I'm kind of digging the lifted mud truck look for now. So let's start with getting the body off and tearing out that engine and taking a look at things. So these scale V8s from RC 4-wheel drive are pretty cool looking. They come. You can get all sorts of different dress-up kits and stuff, Holly and Edelbrock, and some really nice machine stuff. This is how it comes. I guess you'd call it the stock one they sell, the cheaper one. This is what you end up with. I did get the Holly air cleaner for it. That's on there. The original one just is a plain Jane, no labeling on it. And you can get radiator hoses, upper and lower radiator hoses, things like that. I have a nice RC 4-wheel drive aluminum radiator here that was on this truck at one point. There's a whole assortment of stuff that they make scale-wise. The only problem with it is that where the gears mate to the transmission, it's kind of a light-duty gear, and under a lot of load, there's no slipper, and under a lot of load, it likes to chew up the gears. That did not happen here, but it has happened in the past. Here's another transmission I have. The guts are out of it because of that reason. But the problem with this setup is that no matter what you do, you can't get at the electric motor that's inside the engine case here. So if you have any problem, electrical, whatever, your motor craps out on you, you're tearing apart a lot. And you're going to see in the video that follows, the rest of the video here, how hard it is to get that motor out of there. But considering what I'm going to be using the truck for and everything, it's time to make it more useful instead of more showy. And so apparently I thought it was going to be a good idea to lace the steering servo wire underneath all the spark plug cables coming off the distributor there. So we're going to have to get into the oh my god, spacing on words here. The receiver box here, and disconnect it there and get that out from under there. And we'll start unplugging some electronics and get to work on bolting the motor. There she is. This silicone for waterproof, and I use silicone on this receiver box. Bit of a pain in the butt to get open. There's the wire for the steering servo. Take that and get that out from under there. These headers are made out of plastic, and See if this will focus on there. If you look like right in here, the flanges are all breaking, and I've got them kind of super glued together. So just be mindful of them. They're very brittle. So I'm going to get this steering servo out of the way just to make it easier for us to work on stuff. Plus the configuration is going to be completely different where we mount the servo after we're done getting the scale V8 in. And what I'm running for a servo is the Savox 1210 SG, and I guess they call this the Black Edition. It was the only one that was currently available at A-Main Hobbies when I was looking for them. I've run a ton of these servos, and I could highly recommend them. The waterproof wise, they've held up great, and I've used them hard in a lot of different rigs. I think I have like something like 8 of these servos right now. And the heavy Chevy, the green Chevy, and a lot of the other videos, that's the only one that has a more heavy duty servo in it. That's the Holmes Hobbies SHV 800 or 8, I think it's the 850. That's a heck of a servo there. That's. But anyway, the Savox is pretty darn good for like an economy one. If you don't have to spend almost $200 to get crazy. And that's it. Servo's out. On to the next thing. We'll start pulling the Chevy V8 out of this thing. As far as the mechanics of it, you end up in less problems if you just work on it like it's a real truck. So we're going to be removing transfer case, transmission, and the motor there, the engine. So start with taking our drive shafts off first, and then we'll get the transfer case out of there. There's the rear drive shaft. We'll pull that off the transfer case if it wants to. We'll crankshaft it on there a little bit. Front drive shaft's off. So I just unplugged the leads, the power, and ground wire for the actual electric engine that is housed inside the Scale V8. ESC is just Velcroed on for the sake of switching between vehicles, different rigs. So we'll get that out of the way. Yeah, that's not good, that's stripped out. Come on. You gotta be kidding me. So remember when I said you gotta treat them like they're real trucks? Well, the motor mount bolt was stripped out. I was gonna drill it out, and then I realized I was able to dismount part of the shock hoop, the other side of the shock hoop, enough to actually get the bolt to loosen up. And it's coming out now. Not pretty. Put a little angle on the drill, on the bit here, and it's able to just catch it enough to take it out. All right, the front bolt's out. And the rear bolt is free, thank God. Alright, so that's one side done, motor mount wise. Passenger side is exactly the same. Just take the bolt out of the shock hoop and the rear bolt out of the rear portion of the motor mount. So a slight change of plans here. I got to follow my own advice and work on it like it's a real truck. I'm just going to separate the transmission from the motor and pull just the motor out. The reason that being, it is easier to work on this with everything, pull everything out at once and separate it outside the frame rails. But I have a screw back here that is completely stripped and a nightmare to get out, and I don't have access to my grinder right now to notch it out and cut it off, whatever we would have to do there. So being the case that we're still using this transmission, I'm going to separate the motor now and pull that out. readjusted some things off camera, and I got the high lift jack in a better position. The frame rails are separated, and the motor mounts are separated from the frame there. It is a fairly rugged setup, but it does have, it's not quite as strong as your standard pinion spur gear setup. This adapter plate matches the back of that engine, the scale V8. And this recess in here holds a bearing that in turn holds the shaft that this goes into. So you're able to get rid of all this scale stuff, the engine block and all that. Set those gears in here, mount this to the transmission on the bell housing, and up front up here you'll just mount your electric motor in. You see the two holes with the adjustment slots in it. That allows you to just run just the motor with the scale transmission and not have to worry about all this. Sorry if that sounded a little bit redundant, but that's the case there, and we'll get started tearing the scale V8 apart, and I'll show you how that comes apart, and take a look at that motor, the electric motor that's inside it. Grab that bearing out of there, put that over on our adapter plate. We're going to reuse that there. So again, just going to go like that. So what happens here with these RC four-wheel drive scale V8s is there's two halves, and you essentially just have to, there's a bunch of bolts underneath here on each side, take those out, and then on each side you only have to take out one of the motor mount bolts, and that allows the case to separate. And when we get to that point I'll show you, but what we're going to start with is the water pump, the pulley system, and the timing cover here. Looks like I actually left the bolts out on the bottom half. You see that line there? That's actually the half. It's you got your oil pan and then the bottom end of the engine. And this isn't exactly realistic here, but you're able to take this whole half apart to get the electric motor that actually drives the truck out. Here. So 4 bolts underneath. One there, one there, one there, one there. They come out. So we're going to grab this last bolt out of the bottom end, and then next these bolts here. So you have 2 bolts holding the motor mount to the engine, one down in here, one up in here. I'll take the bottommost one out, and the rest of the motor mount can stay with the top half of the motor. Do the same on the other side. And voila. So I'm going to put that back down. Hopefully. Yep. So what I was talking about before on the front here is I did this before and didn't realize I even did it, but I was thinking ahead before, because I left some bolts out. You see the one hole there, a couple bolts in the timing cover. I didn't put those in so that I knew when I came back to do this later, it would just make things a little bit quicker. Not as scale, but you didn't really see it before anyway. So there it is. You got the 4 bolts in the bottom, the 2 motor mount bolts, and if you had the timing bolt cover mounted, you'd have to undo those. And boom, just pull that half off. Brushed motor. The one thing you want to watch when you're installing these is the placement of your positive wire, because the tolerances are so close with the bottom half of the engine. You could actually even see in here where I ground out portions of it to fit it better. But I've had it happen where, like, if you'd see my soldering wasn't the best. Let's see if I can zoom in there for you. Soldering wasn't the best on there. If that solder gets too big, it contacts the aluminum housing in the oil pan there, and you'll ground stuff out, fry things like you wouldn't believe. It wreaks havoc on things. Pretty obvious that it would. So just unbolt the electric motor from the adjustment mounts here. Alright. Try and pull the leads for the electric motor out through the top half of the V8. I think what we're going to do is end up using this V8 in like a rat rod build of some kind. I haven't built a rat rod yet, and I'd really like to do like a one-off custom, my own frame rails and all that kind of crazy stuff. And we'll utilize this scale V8 in it at a later date. So that's about what I'm going to do for this evening. Got everything apart, and we will be starting the process of putting this truck back together, make it more functional for everyday use, and we'll go from there. Another video coming up soon, so stay tuned. I will see you later.